In this training session, we're going to look at the RegEx capabilities of an event log filter. So when do we need that and what can you do with it? So I hope that I made it pretty clear how powerful it is to extract insertion strings for the purpose of not only evaluating events, but also for customizing alerts. And let's take a look at the calculator launch. So here I showed how you can basically completely change the alert that's being sent out into something more digestible, for example. So instead of getting a long email with 15 different fields about processes, you can simply simplify this and just say user so-and-so is doing something and so forth. Now this works great for Windows events, but sometimes events don't have that structure. They don't have insertion strings. And the best example for that are Syslog events, because a Syslog event is sent as just as a long string, and there obviously can't be insertion strings because it's sent via a very simple protocol, Syslog. So example here would be the login to a pfSense firewall. So the event that you're getting from a pfSense firewall when you're logging in is shown in the notes below. I pasted that in there. I added those line breaks. They're not there by default, but you can see that the message is coming, from that syslog at the firewall, the severity and so forth, date and time, and then messages from the actual firewall that it is from index.php and that it was a successful login for a user, and it also shows us the IP address. Now, this filter obviously looks at every incoming syslog message that's been logged to the event log. And then we're filtering it down to the message from the firewall. So this, you can see here that this is, partially matches the string that we have down here. And this filter, as it is set up right here, would simply forward the actual syslog message. No modifications there. But since that's not what we want, we're going to apply a RegEx filter and override the message again. And I've already done the work. So if we go and take a look here, didn't change the message quite yet, but there's a RegEx configured here. So here we have the RegEx that I set up here, and there's tutorials on RegEx. If you're not familiar with those, you can also email our support team, and there's a great website called RegEx 101 if you search that, and that allows you to pretty much build and test regular expressions online for free. So I highly recommend that. We actually have a test capability in EventSentry here as well. So if we go back here and we grab that string, we go back to advanced, back to the RegEx. We have the test input here, and remember I added those line breaks. Those are not there by default. And if I hit the test button here, we can now see what the virtual insertion strings are going to be. So I extracted the username and the IP address, which we can then use either for comparison purposes or for a custom message. So for example, if you were to extract other information from a syslog event, such as a number, then you could also use some of those advanced content filters to look and match, for example, if the number is above or below something, or if the IP address is malicious and things like that. And here we're going to say firewall login. And then here we'll say, so $str1 is the username. So now we'll say str1 logged on to the firewall from IP str2. And that's going to work now because we defined our own insertion strings. Again, I'm going to deploy. We're going to go down here, look for that 1035 event again. So here we are. And let's go back to our filter. And here's the email that I received once I set up the RegEx pattern and customize the subject and the message body of the email. So we can see that the subject is firewall login, but more importantly, we can see that the message now says admin, and it's lowercase because that's directly extracted from the syslog event, logged on to the firewall from IP so-and-so. And you can see that the EventSentry actually resolved the IP address to a host name in the background. So that makes it a little bit easier to interpret the event. So EventSentry does this automatically For all IP addresses, this can be turned off, but in most cases, it's worth it to keep it on. So instead of getting a cryptic syslog message from whatever device may be sending it, switch, firewall, printer, IDS, you can customize these messages and make it a lot easier for the recipient to understand what's actually going on. And on top of that, you then have these insertion strings also available in the event, so you can base rules, filter rules off of them. So if they are an IP address, you can check if they're malicious. If it's a number, you can do numerical comparisons and so forth.